What if the most dangerous man in the city was also the only one capable of winning your heart? Karen never imagined her fate would be tied to Christian, the silent Don, whose presence commands both respect and fear. Get ready for an intense love story filled with secrets, power, and forbidden passion. Subscribe to the channel and like the video so you don't miss the next story. You're about to step into a world where love and danger walk side by side. Shall we begin? The rain fell gently that autumn morning, spreading the scent of damp earth along the cobblestone streets of the old town. Inside the small flower shop, the warm air from the heater softened the chill outside. Karen was finishing an arrangement of orchids when the bell above the door chimed, signaling a new customer. She looked up without much interest. Most came in a hurry, making predictable requests. But something in the air shifted that moment, as if the atmosphere itself had changed. He entered slowly, his steps firm, dressed in a flawless dark suit. Tall, with neatly slicked-back brown hair, a cold expression, and piercing eyes. There was something in the way he scanned the space, like he was calculating everything. Karen swallowed hard. His presence filled the room in a silent, almost suffocating way. "Good morning," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He didn't respond immediately. He walked to the counter, eyes sweeping the room as though seeing beyond the surface. Finally, his voice came, low, smooth, with an indistinct accent. "White lilies, a large bouquet, no added scent." Karen nodded, carefully gathering the lilies. As she arranged them, she felt his gaze on her hands, her neck, her face. It made her uneasy, like she was being studied in silence. "Is it for a special occasion?" she asked, more out of curiosity than politeness. "Deaths don't usually call for occasions," he answered, his tone unchanged. She paused for a second, hesitating. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be intrusive." "You weren't, just unnecessary." Christian stared at her a second longer than was appropriate. "Is it ready?" Karen finished the bow with a white ribbon and handed him the bouquet. "All set." He took the bouquet without touching her, but for a moment, their fingers nearly brushed. That almost touch felt more intense than contact itself. "I'll be back next Tuesday, same time." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "Every week?" He tilted his head slightly, as if observing something curious. "Yes, it's a tradition." He left without another word. Only the bell above the door marked his exit. Karen stood frozen for a moment, staring into space. A strange unease stirred in her chest, as if she had just crossed paths with someone she shouldn't have. In the following days, she tried to forget. But on Tuesday, precisely at 10 in the morning, Christian Morelli returned. Always the same lilies, always the same icy composure. Yet over time, his eyes seemed more attentive. Once he commented that the white shade looked purer. Another time that the ribbon was tied tighter. Small remarks, but they showed he noticed the details. And her. Karen started to notice too. The way he stood so straight, how his eyes scanned the room before locking onto hers. The discreet rings on his fingers, the perfect cut of his suit, and the scent, dry, woody, elegant, and masculine. The kind of scent that lingers in memory. Until, on a cloudy morning, everything changed. The alarm went off at 3 in the morning. Karen, alarmed, rushed down to the flower shop. The door was ajar, forced open. She stepped in cautiously, heart racing, and saw shattered pots on the floor, ruined arrangements, papers scattered everywhere. But nothing had been taken. She called the police. They said it was probably vandalism, nothing serious. The next morning, despite the mess, Karen opened the shop. And, as expected, Christian showed up, punctual. He looked around at the damage in silence. "We had a visitor last night," she said, forcing a smile. "Was that all?" he asked, eyes fixed too intensely. "Yes, nothing was stolen, just destroyed." Christian looked around for a few more seconds. Then his gaze returned to hers, sharp. This wasn't random. What do you mean? When someone breaks in and doesn't take anything, it's a warning. Karen frowned slightly. You seem to know a lot about this. He ignored the comment. Someone's trying to scare you. I'll take care of it. You? She let out a nervous laugh. Why? What do you have to do with this? Christian stepped closer, slowly but with intent. He stopped just in front of her. Karen felt the height difference, the scent, the electric tension in the air. Because you sell flowers to me, and now that ties you to more than you realize. Before she could answer, he turned and walked out, without the bouquet. Karen stood frozen, heart pounding in her chest, unable to make sense of what had just happened. But one thing was certain. Christian Morelli was no ordinary man. And his presence was about to change everything in her life. The flower shop had suddenly become a stage for uncertainty. Ever since Christian's last visit, Karen hadn't been able to sleep well. His words echoed relentlessly in her mind. Now this involves you more than you realize. But involve her in what, exactly? The shop was quiet that night. The clock read 11:37 p.m. She had stayed late, reorganizing the broken vases and trying to restore the ambiance. There was something therapeutic about the solitary work. The scent of flowers, the distant hum of a sleeping city, the warm glow of the desk lamp. That's when she heard it. A soft click from the back. Karen froze. She grabbed her phone. No notifications, no calls. The sound didn't repeat. Maybe it was just the wind, a cat. Paranoia, perhaps. Still, she picked up the pruning shears, her hands trembling, and walked cautiously to the back door. She opened it slowly. Nothing. But what she saw next made her pulse spike. On the small wooden table outside, there was a black envelope, thick, heavy, and next to it, a single white lily, exactly like the ones she arranged for Christian. Swallowing her fear, she picked up the envelope and opened it. No money, no words. Just a photo. The image showed Karen, inside the flower shop, seen through the window. It was 2 nights ago. She was alone, reading a book, leaning on the counter. The sensation of being watched paralyzed her. Good evening, Karen. The voice was deep, husky, and male right behind her. She turned quickly, her heart nearly leaping from her chest, and there he was. Christian. He wore a long, dark coat, his hands in his pockets, his expression harder than ever. How did you get in? She asked, shaking, still holding the shears. He ignored the question. They took your picture. They're sending a message. This is about me. But now they're using you. Is this some kind of sick game? She snapped, taking a step back. Because I don't understand what's going on. Christian moved forward slowly, not threatening, but firm. It's not a game, it's a warning. And you need to leave here for a while. She stared at him, confused and angry. Leave? I don't even know you, Christian. You show up, buy flowers every week, say next to nothing, and now you're telling me what to do like you have some sort of claim on my life? He came close enough that she could feel the heat from his body. Their eyes locked, breath close, tension thick in the air. I have enemies, Karen. People who hurt others to send messages. And right now, you're the easiest link. I tried to keep my distance, but it seems that won't be possible anymore. You don't seem like someone who tries to keep distance, she whispered, her eyes still locked on his. The silence that followed was heavy, intimate, charged with something unsaid, the kind of silence that comes before something that shouldn't happen. Christian took one more step closer. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. I'm not. His voice was lower now. But I choose carefully who I let get close. Then why me? She asked, her breathing unsteady. Because you're different, and I don't like surprises. But you were the only surprise I've had in years. Karen felt her whole body react. She wanted to pull away, but she also wanted answers. she wanted to feel. If I listen to you, what happens after that? He raised an eyebrow, as if she had asked the wrong question. You still don't get it, Karen. There are no guarantees. And then, without asking, without warning, he leaned in and pressed his lips gently to her forehead. It was brief, firm, protective, and terrifyingly intimate. Pack a bag. Tonight. I'll come back for you. She watched as he disappeared through the back of the shop like a shadow. And there she stayed, frozen, with the photo in her hand and her heart pounding wildly. Christian Morelli wasn't just a mysterious client. He was a dangerous enigma. And now, she was part of his story. Karen didn't sleep that night. After Christian left, she sat on the flower shop floor for hours, staring at the photograph in her hands, as if it might reveal something more. The image was meant to warn her, to show that someone, somewhere, was watching. And, most terrifying of all, Christian knew. Worse, he seemed to be the reason. At 4 a.m., she packed a small bag. Just the essentials, a few clothes, documents, her phone, and curiously, a bottle of perfume she wore on days she needed to feel confident. At 5:22 a.m., a black car quietly pulled up on the side street. Karen hesitated. The street was still asleep. The city barely breathed. She looked back at the flower shop one last time before switching off the lights and locking the door. As she approached the car, the window rolled down slowly. Get in. Christian's voice was firm, allowing no room for argument. She got in. The interior was silent, dark, comfortable. Christian wore the same unreadable expression as always. No small talk, only the hum of the engine breaking the stillness of dawn. They drove for over an hour. Karen tried to guess their destination, but the roads grew emptier. Eventually, they reached a secluded house surrounded by tall trees and a wrought iron fence. Discreet, elegant, and clearly secure. Where are we? She asked as she stepped out of the car. Somewhere no one will look for you. He locked the car and walked ahead. For now. The house was spacious, with modern furniture, large windows, and a soft scent of wood and leather. Christian handed her a key. This room is yours. It has everything you need. Rest. From now on, you don't leave here alone. Is this a prison? She shot back, crossing her arms. He looked at her, serious. It's protection. But if you prefer to go back and deal with whoever took that photo, be my guest. Karen remained silent. Deep down, she knew she wouldn't be safe on her own. Not after that night. Not after what she saw in Christian's eyes. Why are you doing this for me? Christian hesitated before replying. Because I've lost people who didn't deserve to pay for my sins. You won't be another. He turned and walked into another room. Karen stood there for a few seconds, feeling the weight of his words. My sins. She felt like someone who had stumbled into the wrong book, a story too dangerous for someone who just wanted to sell flowers. Hours later, freshly showered and lying in bed, Karen still couldn't sleep. Every corner of the house seemed to hide a secret. Every shadow felt like it was watching her. And then, she heard footsteps. Soft, precise, male. She sat up, her heart pounding. Christian appeared at the door, leaning on the frame, now without his coat. His dark shirt was rolled up to the elbows, revealing strong, tattooed forearms. His gaze was the same cold, but alert. Can't sleep? She shook her head. I'm trying to make sense of all this. It'll take time. He entered and stood by the window. There are things even I no longer understand. You seem like someone who understands everything, she said, challenging him. Christian gave the faintest smile, barely noticeable. That's what I let others think. Silence. Karen pulled the blanket up to her waist, feeling awkward with him there, and yet drawn to him. Have you always been like this? She asked. Like what? Mysterious. Cold. calculating. He studied her for a moment before answering. I was made this way. When you grow up surrounded by violence, you learn to survive first, feel later. And do you feel? Christian took longer than necessary to answer. His eyes scanned hers with such intensity that it made her breath catch. With you. Sometimes, yes. The silence that followed was thick and electric. She could hear her own blood in her ears. There was something there unsaid, but undeniable, a fine line between danger and desire. Before she could say anything, Christian turned. Try to sleep. Tomorrow may be complicated. And then he was gone, closing the door behind him. Karen lay back down, his scent still lingering in the air, and the tension still alive on her skin. She was in an unknown place, under the protection of a man who carried secrets in his veins and death in his eyes. And yet, she had never felt more alive. The morning sun filtered through the thick curtains of the house where Karen was hiding. She woke slowly, with the strange sensation of being safe, and at the same time, completely out of place. It took a few seconds to remember where she was, why she was there, and with whom. After showering and changing clothes, she left the room and found Christian in the kitchen. He had his back to her, preparing coffee, wearing a light gray shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders. No visible weapons, no threats in the air, just the soft sound of the coffee machine. Did you sleep well? He asked, without turning. Not really, she replied, picking up a mug. I'm still trying to make sense of all this. Christian placed a cup in front of her and sat on the other side of the counter. For a moment, he looked like an ordinary man. Almost. Ask, he said directly. I know you're full of questions. Karen hesitated. She had many, too many, but she chose the simplest. Who are you really? Christian took a deep breath and leaned his forearms on the table. My full name is Christian de Luca. I was born in Palermo, Sicily, but I was raised in Brazil since I was 6. My father was a dangerous man, cold, leader of a faction tied to the Italian Mafia. I grew up seeing things a child should never see. And you? Followed in his footsteps? He nodded with a faint, sad smile. Didn't have much of a choice. When my father was killed, I was 19. The legacy he left me wasn't money. It was war, blood debts, enemies. The only way to survive was to take his place before they killed me too. Karen listened in silence, absorbing every word. For the first time, she saw Christian as a man who carried far more than power. He carried weight, scars. And what exactly do you do now? She asked more softly. I run businesses. Some legitimate, others, not so much. Laundromats, imports, private security, and a few operations I can't describe without putting you at risk just for hearing them. She swallowed hard. And why did you get involved with me? Christian locked eyes with her. His gaze was different now, less cold, more intense, almost regretful. Because you came into my life without knowing who I was, and for the first time in years, I wanted to be someone different, just by being near you. Karen didn't know what to say. Something inside her trembled. A man like Christian, capable of anything, confessing that bit of vulnerability. That sounds dangerous, she said. It is. Very. He gave a faint smile. That's why I brought you here, because I can't just pretend nothing is happening. Karen looked out the window. The landscape was quiet, peaceful, a hideaway, a limbo between two worlds. Have you ever loved anyone, Christian? He took his time. His silence said more than words. I have. But the life I lead, it doesn't come with happy endings. And with me? She asked, almost in a whisper. Christian moved a little closer, closing the distance between them. I'm still trying to figure out if you're my weakness, or my salvation. Karen's heart pounded. She could feel the tension between them building, but now there was something beyond attraction, there was truth. And me? Can I still get out of this? She asked, her voice tight. Christian studied her deeply. You can, but I won't lie if you stay near me. Your life will never be the same. She took a deep breath, trying to understand what that warning truly meant. And yet, part of her didn't want to run. Part of her wanted to stay and discover who this man really was behind the Mafia title. Christian stood up, passed behind her, and gently touched her hand. Get dressed. We're going out for a bit. I need to show you something. What? A piece of my story I haven't told you yet. Maybe then you'll understand why I am the way I am. Karen nodded. She knew that outing wouldn't just be a distraction. It would be a deeper dive into his past. And perhaps the beginning of something neither of them was ready to face. But it was already too late to turn back. Christian drove in silence. The dirt road led to a remote area, far from the city. Karen, sitting in the passenger seat, kept her eyes on him, studying the man beside her. What did he want to show her? What could be so important in such an isolated place? Where are we going? She finally asked, breaking the silence. Somewhere no one visits anymore, he replied, eyes still on the road. It's where everything started, and where it almost ended. His cryptic answer only deepened her curiosity. Minutes later, the car stopped in front of an abandoned warehouse, covered in vines and surrounded by rusted wire fencing. The gate stood slightly ajar. Christian got out, walked around, and opened the door for her. Do you trust me? He asked, offering his hand. Still deciding, she replied, but took his hand anyway. They stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy with silence and memories. Christian paused in the middle of the warehouse, scanning the peeling walls, stacked crates, the stained concrete floor. This is where I almost died, he said firmly. My father had just been killed. I was betrayed. They tortured me here for 2 days, tried to break me before finishing the job. A chill ran down Karen's spine. How did you survive? I killed them, one by one. Before she could react, a sharp sound echoed through the building. Christian's arm shot up instinctively, shielding Karen. Behind me, now! 2 armed men emerged from the side of the warehouse, dressed in black, faces masked, guns aimed straight at Christian. Christian De Luca, one of them said. There's a high price on your head. Christian pulled Karen behind a pillar and drew the gun from his waistband. His eyes had changed, cold, fast, calculating. Stay low, don't move, he whispered. Before the men could shoot, Christian moved like lightning. 2 shots, one hit the first man in the shoulder. The second returned fire, bullets ricocheting off the concrete walls. Karen ducked down, heart pounding, the deafening sound of gunfire filling the warehouse. Christian rolled across the floor and fired again. A shout, then silence. Seconds later, it was over. Christian walked over to her, tense but unharmed. He held out his hand. Let's go. We can't stay here. What was that? She asked, still in shock. Someone trying to send me a message. They don't like that I've been pulling away from the dirtier parts of the business. Was this because of me? He stopped and cupped her face in both hands, firm but gentle. No, this is my world. You just happen to be in it now. She swallowed hard. The adrenaline still surged in her veins, but strangely, something inside her was wide awake, alive. Christian led her back to the car. As he got in, his expression was hard, controlled, but something behind his eyes had shifted. I need to take care of this, he said, starting the engine. And I will. No one touches you. Karen looked at him. That cold face, those eyes locked on the road. Something had changed in him back in that warehouse. Something violent, yes, but also honest. And she knew she was falling deeper into this world. And maybe, just maybe, she no longer wanted to escape. The road was lined with tall cypress trees, standing like silent sentinels of a forgotten empire. The black car moved forward with purpose until the iron gates slowly opened. The sound of the heavy gears echoed like a thunderous announcement. Someone was returning. Someone who was never meant to leave. Christian DeLuca was back at his mansion. Karen, sitting beside him, looked out at what could only be described as a palace. Tall walls, discreet security cameras, armed men at the entrance. Everything screamed power. Yet there was also a strange, quiet beauty, something haunting. This was not just a home. It was a throne. And Christian was king once more. As soon as he stepped out of the car, his men approached. "I told them this day would come," one of them said, bowing his head in respect. Christian gave a short nod. His entire demeanor had shifted. The dark tailored suit, the hardened eyes, the measured, commanding walk. He was no longer the reclusive man hiding from the shadows. He was the shadow. "Gather everyone in the great hall in 20 minutes. No exceptions," he ordered. "Bring me the last month's reports. I want to know who moved, who spoke, who betrayed." The men obeyed without hesitation. His presence was absolute. It carved through the air. Christian turned to Karen. "From now on, you stay here. With me. No one touches you. No one gets close unless I say so." She looked at him, surprised by the change. "All this. For me?" "No." He stepped closer. "Because I chose to. They thought they could use you to get to me. They're about to regret waking the dawn." Karen didn't answer. Her heart was pounding, eyes locked on the man who now looked more dangerous and more irresistible than ever. Christian led her inside the mansion. It was even more impressive within. Black marble, crystal chandeliers, old paintings, and heavy wood furniture. A place of luxury, but with tension always beneath the surface. The kind of place where life and death decisions were made in whispers. "This will be your wing," he said, opening a set of double doors. "Reinforced security. 4 men posted outside. Anything happens, you call me. Understood?" Karen nodded. Before leaving, he stepped toward her again, closer than before, his gaze sharp. "I know this is a lot for you, but there's only one way to keep you alive, and this is it." Then he left his subtle cologne and the tension in the air lingering long after. Hours later, Christian stood at the head of the long table in the main hall. Old allies and new faces filled the chairs, all eyes on him. When he spoke, his voice cut through the silence like a blade. "We have an internal enemy, or someone selling us out. Someone dared to touch what's mine. I want names. I want blood, if that's what it takes." One of the men stepped forward, handing him an envelope. "We received this last night, a warning, and a picture of her." Christian opened it. Karen. Alone in the garden of her old home, clearly being watched. His jaw clenched. Who was in charge of her security that day? "It was Marco, sir, but he disappeared." Christian crossed his arms slowly. "Then start with him. If he's alive, bring him. If he's dead, find out who gave the order." No one dared respond. The dawn was back, and he had no intention of being merciful. As Christian climbed the stairs to his private quarters, he passed by Karen's wing. The door was slightly open. He saw her standing by the window, lost in thought. For a moment, he simply watched. She was his weakness, but also his fire. And he knew the war had only just begun. And Christian DeLuca never lost a war. Christian walked with firm steps through the black marble corridor of the mansion. The soft lights cast shadows along the walls, but he was used to walking among shadows. He wasn't just a leader, he was a strategist, and now the war was personal. In the surveillance room, 3 large screens displayed real-time images from different areas of the mansion. Christian stepped closer. "I want footage from the last 5 days, internal and external. Review everything. Any unusual movement, any unfamiliar face. Let me know immediately." The guards nodded, tense. No one wanted to disappoint the dawn. Christian returned to his office. To his surprise, Karen was already there. Sitting in a dark leather armchair, she looked confused, yet determined. "You don't have to keep me locked up here like a prisoner," she said. "I deserve to know what's going on." Christian stared at her for a moment. Then he walked over to the bar and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to her. "You're here because someone's been watching you. And if I'm right, it has everything to do with me." "But why? Who's behind this?" He leaned back into the armchair across from her, eyes sharp, as if weighing every word. "There are 3 families who could be involved. One has ties to the Italians I cut off years ago. Another is trying to expand their territory. The third is personal, very personal." Karen frowned. "And you think they're trying to use me to get to you?" Christian nodded once. "You're my weakness, they saw that, and they'll exploit any crack I leave open." A tense silence settled between them. For the first time, Karen understood the true weight of being close to a man like him. "And what are you going to do now?" she asked, voice low. Christian rose and walked to the large window. Outside, his men patrolled the grounds. The night was cold, but he seemed unaffected. "I'll go all the way, I'll find out who dared to come near you, and I'll destroy every single one of them." That same night, Christian left the mansion. He took only 2 trusted men and a single address, a nightclub downtown. Elegant on the surface, but filthy behind the scenes. Inside, the music was loud, the lights crimson. Christian moved straight to the back of the club, where a man was waiting, an old acquaintance from the underworld. "Christian De Luca, I thought you were retired. You should know I only disappear when I want to." The man smiled, nervous. "If you're here for information, it's going to cost you." Christian pulled a small silver box from his coat pocket. Inside was a ring, the De Luca family crest. He placed it on the table. "Is this enough?" The man swallowed hard. "Depends on the question." Christian leaned in, voice cold. "Who's moving against me? And why are they watching Karen?" The informant hesitated, but finally spoke. "There's talk of an old rival coming back. They call him the Widower. Rumor is he lost his wife because of you, and he swore revenge. He doesn't just want to destroy you, he wants to make you suffer." Christian remained silent for a few seconds, his eyes staring into the void. "If he touches her," he murmured, voice low and dark, "he'll wish he'd never been born." The following night fell like a heavy veil over the mansion. Christian sat in his office, analyzing reports and suspicious movements his informants had brought in. The name Widower kept surfacing in the darkest corners of the underworld, yet no one dared speak of him openly. He was a ghost, and now he was haunting Karen. Karen watched Christian from a distance. He was quieter, more focused. His eyes held the controlled rage of a man ready to strike. And still, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. "You still haven't told me what you found," she said, entering the office slowly. Christian stood from his chair, both hands resting firmly on the desk. "I found out that my past is back. And it wants to collect a debt. And you're right in the middle of it." "But why? I wasn't even part of your life back then." "Exactly," he said, walking toward her. "That's why they chose you. Because they know you're not prepared, and they think I'll be too distracted trying to protect you." At that moment, one of the guards rushed in. "Sir, there was movement on the perimeter. One of our cars was intercepted. We found this on the hood." Christian took the small black envelope. Inside, he found a single red rose, stained with blood, and a note written in cold, deliberate handwriting. "You took everything from me. Now I'll take what's left of you. She's just the beginning." Christian clenched the paper tightly, his jaw locked. He looked at Karen, eyes burning. "They just declared war." Christian gathered his men in the main hall of the mansion. Normally silent and imposing, the room now echoed with deep voices and the clatter of weapons being loaded. "I want all access points locked down. Double the guards. No one comes in or out without my order." "And the widower?" one of the men asked. "He'll see me standing, not as a man hiding. but as the dom I've always been. That night, Christian took Karen to the mansion's underground bunker, a fortified shelter built during the old Mafia wars. Reinforced doors, full surveillance, supplies for weeks. You'll stay here when I'm gone. That's not a suggestion, Karen. It's an order. And where are you going? She asked, her voice trembling. Christian held her face in his hands. I'm going to hunt this bastard before he gets to you. Then he was gone, dressed in black, armed, accompanied by two of his most loyal men. He was no longer the Christian she'd known weeks ago. He was the dom, the predator. Hours later, Christian stormed into an abandoned warehouse, where, according to an informant, the widower might be hiding. The place was dark, reeking of rust and gunpowder. If anyone's in here, now's the time to surrender, he shouted. The answer came in the form of gunfire. Christian and his men dove for cover, bullets tearing through the silence. He returned fire with deadly precision, taking down two attackers. But what he found at the far end of the warehouse was far more disturbing. Not the widower, but another message. On one of the bodies, taped to the chest, was a black envelope. Too slow, Dom. While you play war, I'm dancing with your lady. Christian exhaled sharply, fury surging through his veins. Karen! Without hesitation, he ran for the car. Time was now his greatest enemy. Christian drove like a bullet down the dark road leading back to the mansion. His hands gripped the wheel so tightly, his knuckles turned white. The message echoed in his mind like a curse. While you play war, I'm dancing with your lady. The mansion loomed in the distance, silent and pitch black. The main gate stood wide open. Christian stopped the car just before entering. He stepped out quietly, calculating each step like the predator he had become again. His men, hidden in strategic positions, waited for his signal. But Christian knew. This fight was personal. He entered alone. The silence was suffocating. The scent of blood hung thick in the air. The first body was by the front door, one of his own. Christian didn't flinch. He walked past it. The second body was in the hallway. The third on the stairs, all executed with a single shot to the forehead. Precise, cold, professional. Then he reached the grand hall. And froze. Karen sat in the center of the room, tied to a wooden chair. Her hands bound behind her back, her mouth gagged, her tear-filled eyes locked on him the moment he stepped in. Behind her stood the widower. Dressed in a dark suit, calm as ever, as if this were a casual evening affair. You came quickly, Dom, the widower said, his smile cold. But not quick enough, was it? Christian clenched his fists, but held his composure. Let her go, now. Funny, the widower mused. You've always been direct. But tonight, you look scared. She's different, isn't she? Not like the others you used and threw away. Christian said nothing. His gaze never left Karen. You took my brother. You ruined my family. You erased my name from the streets. Your brother was a psychopath who tortured teenage girls. Christian shot back coldly. And you were just another leech. The widower's smile vanished. Now you'll learn what it feels like to lose something you love. He pressed the barrel of his gun against Karen's shoulder. Christian took one step forward. Touch her, and you die right now. You're alone in here, Dom. Outnumbered. Christian smiled a slow, dangerous grin. Am I? Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Christian's men, strategically placed, opened fire on the widower's men hidden throughout the mansion. Bullets cracked through windows. Shouts echoed. Bodies dropped. The widower grabbed Karen and dragged her back behind a marble pillar, using her as a shield. Christian followed. In seconds, they were face to face. You gonna shoot me in front of her? The widower mocked, pressing the gun closer to Karen's neck. Christian aimed his pistol directly at the widower's head, steady and cold. You should have never touched her. And you should have never stopped being who you were, the Dom. You went soft for a woman, and now you'll lose everything. Christian didn't wait. He fired. The bullet struck the widower in the shoulder. He screamed and dropped his weapon, releasing Karen. Christian lunged forward and caught her before she collapsed. He tore the gag off and untied her quickly. Are you okay? Karen nodded, gasping, crying. Is it over? Christian wrapped his arms around her, protective, firm. Not yet. But you're safe now. Behind them, the gunfire faded. His men emerged, confirming the perimeter was secure. The widower, wounded but alive, lay groaning on the floor. Christian rose, walked over, and looked him dead in the eyes. You're going to live, and you're going to see what it means when I say the Dom is back. No one touches what's mine. The mansion was in chaos. Men moved hurriedly through the corridors, cleaning up the aftermath of the attack. The bodies had been removed, the walls still scarred by bullets, and the metallic scent of blood lingered in the air. Christian was back, and everyone knew it. Christian sat at the head of the long meeting table, dressed in a dark suit, his tie loosened, eyes fixed on the documents in front of him. His expression was hard, but something new flickered beneath the surface, an emotional weight that hadn't been there before. Karen watched from the doorway. Since he had rescued her, they hadn't had a moment alone. He avoided looking at her for too long, as if still processing everything that had happened. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. They're saying the widower survived, she said softly. Christian nodded without looking up. Yes, and he'll live to watch every one of his men fall. He flipped a page. I want him to know his biggest mistake was reminding me who I am. Karen slowly approached, stopping beside his chair. Christian, you don't have to become that man again. I do. He finally looked up, his eyes sharp and intense. Because you're alive because of that man. He stood, closing the distance between them. The tension was thick in the air. And you? He asked, staring deeply into her eyes. Are you afraid of me now? Karen took a breath, her heart racing. No, I'm afraid of what you might do, but not of you. Christian stepped closer, inches away now. Then why are your eyes trembling? Because you look at me like you want to possess me. Because I do. He cut her off. The silence that followed was charged, electric. She lowered her eyes, but he gently lifted her chin, making her face him. You've seen me in ways no one else has, Karen. You saw me stripped of everything, even of myself, and still you stayed. His voice came out rough, like he was fighting something inside himself. I can't pretend anymore. Karen silently placed her hand on his chest. Then stop pretending. She was the first to close her eyes, and he was the one who kissed her. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was intense, fueled by everything they hadn't said. A collision of two worlds, two souls. Christian wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close, as if he wanted to fuse every part of her to his. His mouth was hot, possessive, but there was care hidden within the hunger, as if, behind the cold and dangerous man, was someone terrified of losing her more than any war. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. This doesn't change what we're facing, she whispered. No, but it changes how I'll fight. Christian looked out the window, toward the dark horizon. Now, Karen, they're going to feel the weight of the name they tried to erase. The dawn is back, and he's ready to burn the world if it means keeping you safe. The night had fallen heavy over the city. Lightning split the sky like omens of an inevitable end. In the silent suburbs, black cars moved in formation. Each vehicle carried men loyal to Christian, quiet, determined, lethal. It was the beginning of the end. Christian sat in the lead car, staring out the window in silence, hands resting firmly on his knees. There was something different about him tonight, a calm, almost grim air, as if he was finally at peace with what had to be done. Beside him, Matteo, his right hand, confirmed. The 5 hideouts have been cleared. None of the widower's allies survived, just as you ordered. Christian nodded, eyes still on the window. Only he remains. Captivity basement of an abandoned vineyard. The widower sat in a steel chair, handcuffed. His face was bruised, clothes stained and wrinkled. Days in captivity had drained every ounce of pride. But his eyes still burned with hate, the kind that only comes from loss. The door creaked open. Christian walked in. Alone. His footsteps echoed through the damp space until he stopped just a few feet away. They stared at each other in silence. Christian spoke first. "It's over." The widower gave a bitter smile. "You killed all my men?" Christian crossed his arms. "One by one, no rush, just like I promised." "And you came to deliver the message like some noble knight?" "I came to end this. My way." Silence. The widower chuckled darkly, almost without strength. "You have no idea what you've caused, Christian. I know exactly what I did." The widower looked up, locking eyes with him. "You killed my son. That boy was everything I had. He wasn't involved, he was just a student. You pulled the trigger. I found out after. And a few months later, his mother, my wife, died of grief." Christian didn't respond right away. His jaw tightened, but his eyes remained cold. "I remember the boy," he finally said. "He was in one of the warehouses during a crossfire. But he was armed. He was a threat. I did what any leader would do." The widower laughed bitterly. "No, you did what a killer does, and now you want to finish me off thinking it'll cleanse you?" Christian slowly stepped forward, kneeling in front of him eye to eye. "I'm not looking for redemption. I'm looking for peace." The widower closed his eyes, defeated. Christian stood, calmly drew his gun. "May she find you before I do." One shot. Silence. Christian stood still for a few seconds, staring at the lifeless body of the man who almost destroyed everything he loved. He took a deep breath, holstered his weapon, and walked out, leaving the door wide open behind him. Hours later, Christian's mansion. Karen sat in the garden, beneath a pergola draped in white roses. The wind was soft, and the night now felt lighter. Christian approached in silence, sitting beside her. She looked at him. He didn't need to speak. She already knew. "It's over?" she asked softly. Christian nodded. "It's over. And now?" He looked at her for a long moment. His eyes, once so cold, now held a different light. Not peace, but relief. "Now. I learned to live again." Karen took his hand in hers. And for the first time in years, Christian smiled a subtle, genuine human smile. Morning arrived softly, with the sky painted in shades of rose and gold. The mansion was silent, as if even its walls respected the moment of peace that had finally come. Karen had woken before sunrise. Dressed in a light nightgown, she walked through the halls with quiet steps. She opened the balcony doors and let the fresh air touch her face. She breathed deeply, trying to absorb that calm moment, so rare after everything they had been through. She knew a decision had to be made. Return to her life, her home, the flower shop, return to the woman she was before Christian entered her story, or perhaps embrace the woman she had become because of him. Later that morning, the two met on the back terrace, where breakfast was set under the shade of a vine-covered pergola. "Do you still buy flowers every week?" she asked gently, holding a cup of tea. Christian looked at her with a serene yet melancholic expression. "Yes, every Tuesday. But why?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Always white lilies. Always at the same time." He took a moment before answering. Then, looking out at the garden, he said in a quiet voice, "They're for my mother's grave." Karen stopped. Her eyes widened slightly. "She loved white lilies," he continued, "and I never stopped bringing them, even after everything." It's the only place where I still feel like a son. She was moved. It was the first time she'd heard Christian speak like that. Unguarded, without power, without armor. Silence settled between them. Then she spoke carefully. I've been thinking about going back home. To my life. The flower shop. My world. Christian met her eyes. There was something gentle yet firm in his tone when he replied. You're free, Karen. You always were. If you want to go back, no one will stop you. Not even me. She bit her lip, touched by his sincerity. But then he added, if you decide to go, I'll step away. Completely. To protect you. So that nothing from my world ever reaches you again. Karen took a deep breath. Part of her wanted to stay, but another part needed to go. She stepped closer, as if words weren't enough anymore. Christian. He opened his arms silently, and she hugged him. It was a long, warm, quiet embrace. She whispered, her voice tight with emotion. Thank you. For everything. Even for the things that hurt. They made me stronger. He whispered into her hair. And you made me human again. They pulled apart slightly, and looked into each other's eyes. The kiss was inevitable. It was slow, restrained, full of unspoken words. A kiss of farewell, but with the taste of possibility. Neither a promise nor an end. Just real. When they broke apart, Karen smiled, gently touching his face. I think it's time to pack my bags. Christian nodded with a faint smile, but his eyes said so much more. He knew that in setting her free, he was also letting a part of himself go. She turned and walked back into the mansion, her steps light. Christian stayed there, watching her disappear down the corridor. That morning, the white lilies on the table were still fresh. Karen had resumed her usual routine, or so it seemed on the outside. The small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, the flower shop opening early each morning, the delicate bell ringing every time a customer walked in. She smiled at her neighbors again. She watered the plants with care. She picked each flower with love. But nothing was exactly the same. Every time the bell above the door rang, Karen's heart beat faster. For a second, she believed it might be him, Christian. With that firm posture, those deep eyes, his hands holding the white lilies as if they were sacred. But it wasn't him. It never was. The days passed quietly. She sold flowers, made arrangements, delivered bouquets. Sometimes she came home alone and ate dinner in silence. She turned on the TV, but didn't pay attention to anything. She slept hugging her pillow, feeling a void she couldn't name. Across the city, in a glass-covered penthouse, Christian watched without being seen. He never got too close, never interfered, but his eyes were always attentive. Trusted men stood in discreet locations. They reported to him quietly. Karen was fine. She had gone out to buy fruit. A new customer had entered the shop. She smiled today. Or she cried behind the counter. Christian listened and remained silent. He had promised not to interfere, and he kept his word. But that didn't stop him from feeling. The absence of her felt like a dense fog clinging to his soul. During the day, Christian stayed busy with the family business. He had resumed control of the organization with strength and strategy. His enemies now stepped back at the sound of his name. Don Christian carried weight again. But at night, he looked at his phone, never sent a message. He drove past the flower shop, unseen by her. And when he returned home, he opened a small wooden box where he kept a dried flower. A white lily, the last one he had bought with his own hands at that shop. They were both lonely, separated by a respectful decision, by fear, by care, but connected by a longing that never seemed to fade. Christian knew he had to let her live. And Karen tried to convince herself she was better off this way. But deep down, they both knew something was missing. Night fell slowly over the city, painting the buildings in orange tones and long shadows. Karen stood by her apartment window, a fresh bouquet of white lilies resting on the table. It was Tuesday, and once again, she wondered if he had passed by unseen. The weight of longing pressed heavily on her chest. She had tried to move on, to pretend everything was fine. But the truth was, living without him hurt, more than she had ever thought possible. So, she made a decision. She dressed simply, but beautifully, tied her hair loosely, took her keys, and left. She knew the way. Christian's mansion was quiet, surrounded by tall trees and discreet surveillance, but she didn't hesitate. She climbed the steps to the main entrance and knocked firmly, her heart pounding in her chest. The door opened seconds later. There he was. Christian. Black shirt, sleeves rolled up, expression unreadable. But his eyes said everything. He already knew. He had felt her presence even before the knock on the door, like their hearts were still beating in the same rhythm. For a moment they said nothing. They just looked at each other. Time seemed to stop. Then Karen stepped forward. Her voice was steady but full of emotion. I tried living without you, but I can't. Christian didn't answer. He just pulled her close, cupping her face with desperate tenderness, and kissed her. It was an urgent kiss, intense, like lost time had to be reclaimed all at once. His hands moved down her back, their bodies pressing together with a hunger too long restrained. Karen surrendered. No fear, no doubt. Their clothes slowly fell away between kisses and touches that spoke louder than words. Christian guided her through the house to a bedroom she had never seen. The space was elegant, dark, with large windows and a bed covered in white sheets, where they lay together as if they had always belonged there. His body was strong, warm. His hands explored her curves with reverence and hunger. She felt as though it were the first time, not of the body, but of the heart, because now it was love. It was a choice. Whispers mixed with soft moans. Their eyes met between kisses, silently confirming a truth long denied. They belonged to each other. And that night, between sheets and muffled sighs, Karen and Christian didn't just make love. They found each other, truly. No fear, no masks, no empty promises. Just the two of them, whole. The sound of footsteps echoed firmly through the marble corridors of the mansion. Men stopped talking when they saw him walk by. Others simply lowered their eyes in respect. Christian had reclaimed his position, not as a mere heir to the Mafia throne, but as its absolute sovereign. The Don was back. But something in his presence had changed. He was still feared, respected, and ruthless in business. His decisions were swift, his gaze piercing. No enemy dared challenge him. But now, by his side, was her. Karen. She wasn't a queen in title. She wore no crown, asked for no permission. But her presence was felt in every gesture Christian made, in every decision he took. Her steady gaze beside his made allies understand. She wasn't a decoration. She was part of the empire. Meetings now took place in the glass-walled hall overlooking the gardens, the same place where once she had hidden. Now she sat there with him, listening, watching. And sometimes, with a calm remark, she silenced the entire room. Christian trusted her intuition as if it were his own. At night, far from the world, it was just the two of them, in silence or in passion, in whispered conversations by the fireplace, or in fierce touch in the bedroom they now shared. The past still lived, in his eyes, in her scars. But it was no longer a burden. It was only the road that had led them here. One evening, as they watched the city from the balcony, Christian spoke in a rough voice. You changed everything. Karen leaned her head on shoulder. I only reminded you who you were inside. He smiled softly, a rare gesture, just for her. Two worlds that once seemed opposite now coexisted. the florist and the mafia boss. Calm and fire, light and shadow. Neither of them belonged in a fairy tale, and they didn't want to. They built something more real, stronger. An alliance sealed not by blood, but by silence. And love.
Before you go, let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Like this video to support the channel. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.